Hello. I am covered in dog hair, apparently. Cool. Excellent. We love that. We love being covered in dog hair. Oh, goodness. Hello, everyone. Thank you for waiting for so long for me to be on the stream. Let me know if you can hear me. Whoa! Thank you so much, John Bull. $4.99 through Super Chat. I don't know if you had a question associated with that, but thank you. We are getting started off right. So, before we actually talk about answering questions, I don't have a theme today. Just sort of an open floor discussion, polyamory, asexuality, BDSM, DDLG, ongoing things and news items happening on the internet. Whatever it is you want to know about, you can ask me and I would be happy to answer. So yeah, just a little interactive Q&A, a little hangout session. And other than that, 18 plus only, so if you're not 18, please do not be here. And please also read the rules down below, very important. There are certain topics that I can't answer or don't feel comfortable talking about. So if you ask me, like, how can I drink my girlfriend's blood? How can I choke my boyfriend? Like, I can't help you with that. Even if in some cases I do possess that knowledge, I do not believe it is safe to educate about it online to a stranger that I don't know. So I don't answer those questions. But otherwise, check out all the wonderful resources below. Final note as well is when you are donating, if you choose to, that does bump up your question in the order queue, essentially, because I do tend to go in the order that things are asked in. So if you ask, like, at the beginning of the stream, more likely to get to you. And then I do give 15 minutes at the very end for people to re-ask questions if I didn't get to them for some reason. And if you want to make sure that yours gets answered right away, like, you don't do that by spamming me 3 or 4 times in 10 minutes the same question, because then I'm just going to skip over you because I don't reward bad behavior. We want to make sure your question gets answered. A super chat, like any dollar amount, it's fine. Like, and don't have a minimum for that. And if you do want to sort of make sure your dollar goes the farthest, you can use the Streamlabs link that I have below as well. And the reason why I sort of suggest that is because YouTube takes 30% of all super chats. And so that is sort of a way to get around that, but then still have your question featured. And there is, what is that? A moving truck? Thank you, moving truck. Very good ambiance for this. Oh, it's FedEx. It's FedEx that did it. Thanks, FedEx. Interrupting my live streams. Okay, let's go over to the chat and see how everyone's doing. I hope. Will YouTube let me? There we go. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. With all the crap that the female gender goes through, why aren't there more dominatrix? So, I mean, I think the real answer to that is sort of complicated in that even when you're a dominatrix, you don't really escape the male gaze. Like, if you look at BDSM pornography, like, the most sexualized thing that there is out there is being a female dominatrix. So if you're looking to sort of take your power back as like a motivation to do BDSM, being a femdom, or at least a dominatrix, is not necessarily going to free you from that. It is just going to subject you to a different sort of slightly weirder objectification in a lot of spaces, at least in a lot of ways, depending on how you go about doing it. And also because being a dominatrix is not something that appeals to all women. I think there are there's a Morgan Thorne video where she talks about this, and I recommend Morgan Thorne if you want more of a femdom perspective. And she talks about how there's this like misconception about the ratio, and how the ratio is said to be this issue where there's like 1,000 male submissives for every one female dom. And I don't think that's true, and she doesn't think that's true. Like, there definitely are more male submissives than female doms, but that also has to do with some complicated factors. Like, for some reason, particularly with cis men, the term submissive, because of pornography, frankly, I think, gets used as this very blanket term where other people... Take your time, FedEx, take your time. I have my window open right now to try and help with my camera maybe not overheating. Also, I have this, like, I don't know if I need this ring light on. It definitely changes. Should I have the ring light on or off? What do you guys think? Because this is with it off. This is with it on. So, I'm moving the ring light as far away as I can from the camera. So, it shouldn't actually be on the camera at all. But... anyways, that's what we're working with. So, where was I? What was I talking about? Okay, I was talking about the ratio, and then being a female dominant not appealing to people. I totally lost my train of thought. Oh, I had like a big idea that I wanted to share. Okay, I'm glad people can't hear FedEx, but it was so loud I couldn't hear myself, so I'm glad that my system for noise cancellation seems to be working out fairly well. But no, it was like, I don't even know how to replicate the sound of a truck, but it was very loud and literally directly outside my window, so that's fun. I'm sure at some point our favorite motorcycle rider that always likes to come through at like 8:30 p.m. is gonna make an appearance, so... you know, look at your watches for that. Oh yeah, I was talking about there are a lot of, and I have a video I'm in the process of editing right now, which is gonna like get into this in a lot of detail, but I think there is sort of this confusion that happens. I think when cis men that find being submissive appealing, like they watch porn and they think they get like being a bottom or being a fetishist confused being a submissive. So there's lots of people that like classify themselves as being submissive that are better described with other terms. And I think that also affects the ratio, because there are also a lot of like female switches that are more than happy to top to male bottoms, but there's also this like weird gendered stereotype or expectation where like submissive men or bottom men don't want to bottom to female switches because they don't like the idea that they've been topped by other men. Can't make this shit up. That's just real life. It's just, I don't know. I don't know how else to explain it. Oh, thank you, George. George says, as a sadist, do you think you let your sadistic inclinations come out by enjoying one's emotional discomfort when you are angry with them? So it's, if I'm angry at someone, do I enjoy that because I like watching the other person's emotional discomfort? Interesting question. I don't think that's connected. I can see how somebody might interpret it that way, but I don't like it when anyone around me has really rubbed up emotions. Like, I'm like a fairly emotional person myself. I can get fairly like emotionally activated, and so I actually like struggle being around people that are also really like emotionally activated. So if you're someone that yells a lot or screams or is very like just boisterous when they have a big emotional response, like I actually don't like being around that at all. So I can see why some people might get something out of that, but if I'm going to get something out of someone sadistically, it's going to be like consensual in a kink scene and not like as part of an unrelated conversation. I try not to take my kink into non-kink interactions. And I know that some people separate that less than others, but I feel like it's kind of important to have like a line between like, hey, here's like a real life interaction with the person versus like something that's in more of a scene space or in like a negotiated dynamic. Because, well, I guess it'd be one thing if that was like part of a negotiated dynamic, but I feel like that would probably be like fairly corrosive to having good conversations and having a good long-term relationship with that person. If you're like secretly enjoying them being upset at you, that doesn't feel sustainable to me. But I think the reason why that's important to me is because I feel like there can be a lot of issues. Like I'm thinking more with this part of it like in a submissive frame of mind. There are a lot of people that tend to approach being submissive with like something they do all the time. So even when they're not in a relationship with someone, they haven't even negotiated yet, like they will start like being submissive to that person in sort of like subliminal ways, like either the way they talk to the person, the way they approach them, like immediately going to like honorifics and titles, and it's like, I didn't ask for this, like what's happening? So I caution about like having too much of an overlap between like the way you talk in a vanilla space, in a vanilla conversation, versus like how you would do in a scene or in like somewhere where that is maybe more negotiated. But good question. I think if I get sadistic pleasure out of anything, and this is like more indirect, sort of a nice side effect, I love sharing horrific ideas for things that tops and bottoms and subs and doms can do together, and like watch usually the submissive be horrified at the suggestion and be like, why did you give them that idea? I enjoy doing that. So I have a video coming up soon that is going to feature as one of the potential points of, oh god, why did you suggest that? It is going to involve recreating recipes from like 1950s era cookbooks. And if you know anything about that, you know it's gross and like cruel and unusual. Like they did some weird shit with food in the 50s that I don't think any person should be eating. And there's a lot of reheating of canned soups and turning them into alcoholic beverages. So be forewarned. I do enjoy giving kind of evil ideas to people, and I think that's like my main outlet for a lot of things. Of course. Is mayonnaise an instrument? Mayonnaise is an instrument so long as you put it inside of a trombone first. You have to put it inside of a brass instrument first before it can be counted as an instrument. Does that answer make any sense? No, it doesn't, but it doesn't have to, because it's my live stream. I just want to see my name in the chat. Well, your name is in the chat, so congratulations. You have phased no one. Is there an old age limit? No, there is not. I actually have viewers that are like all age ranges between like 18 and like their 60s. So kind of wherever you're at, I'm just glad you're here. I have had many lovely interactions and conversations from people that are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. Some of my favorite classes and things I've learned have come from people in that age range. And on that note, I have gotten a couple comments like this as of late, and in case one of those people is watching, or maybe this is you, you are never too old to discover a kink. And I know it can feel like, oh my god, like why didn't I discover this in my 20s? Like I wasted so much time, like not being able to do this amazing thing. And I get that feeling, but at the same time, I think it's worth acknowledging that over the years where you weren't doing BDSM, you were still building a lot of skills that will help you be good at it or even better at it than you would have been, and have a better experience maybe than you would have had you started when you were like much younger, because you have just more life experience. You maybe have a partner you have had a really close long-term relationship with that is really, really solid and a great place to start from. You just know what you want more. You are maybe more confident. You have the time and money available to be able to go to events. Maybe you're retired or close to retirement and your job is like really secure. And a lot of people in their 20s and 30s don't have, like, maybe they just play around in the bedroom, but they can't afford the equipment because of, you know, student debt, or they don't have time because they are still working 2 jobs, or maybe they are just getting started in a more like prestigious career field, and so doing anything associated with BDSM would be potentially just a nuclear bomb on their whole career opportunities, so they tend to kind of shy away from public interactions. So there are like advantages and disadvantages no matter where you start from, but it's definitely not all disadvantages if you start practicing stuff when you're older. So, you know, there are pluses and minuses either way. Oh no! Oh, I wonder if someone was gonna ask me about this. How fucked up is the Gabby Petito thing? Listen, I know I've talked about Marilyn Manson and everything else. I'm not gonna cover the Gabby Petito story because there are parts of it that frankly are like kind of triggering for me, like even more so than some of the Marilyn Manson stuff, because like they are filmed interactions that are publicly available between Gabby and Brian Laundrie. So if anyone hasn't heard of this yet, if maybe you just watch my YouTube channel and no one else, there was a couple, Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie, who were going on this kind of nomadic cross-country camper van adventure, and she was documenting it online, and they had some like relationship issues that like weren't necessarily known about on the internet, but were revealed to have at least been told to her mother. And sometime in the last like month or so, I think it was sometime like very early September, like maybe like September 1st, August 30th, Brian came back home from their trip with Gabby's van and without her. And her body was recently discovered in a park. And it's just like, it's really messy. It's really just really, really sad to like watch and read about. If you guys do want to know about it though, I love watching a YouTuber. Her name is Kendall Ray. And if you're into anything related to like a true crime or anything like that, I want to make sure I spell her name correctly, because of course it's never like, there's a million ways you could spell Kendall Ray. So it's Kendall Ray. It's KENDALLRAE. And I think, you know, I love Bailey Sari and I love a lot of other true crime channels. Those are the two I pretty much watch the most by far. I feel like Kendall does a really, really good job of always being like so respectful and putting the family first and being really empathetic in the way that she talks about things. And she just put out an update video on kind of everything we know so far and dispelling some of the myths and rumors and following up on a lot of things. It's like an hour and 7 minutes long. It's very much worth watching. And also bonus when you watch her channel is she has lots of animals, and they oftentimes appear in the videos as sort of a nice little background in like it's like getting like a palate cleanser in the middle of the video, like one of the animals shows up. So I really enjoy it. I think she did a really good job, but it is just like watching it is really hard because I'm sorry I'm like talking about this, so for anyone that like doesn't want to listen to this, I totally understand. But there's like the part where they were in the, like, Brian and Gabby got into a fight outside of a food co-op, I believe in Utah or Arizona, somewhere around there. And there was basically a person that called 911 and reported that he was hitting her, and there were like issues involving him in the car and a couple other things. And so police showed up and pulled them over. And like Brian is just like stone, like perfectly like super composed, very, very calm, and Gabby is just like crying and crying and crying the whole time. Literally, the police officer said the entire time that they were talking, like, she didn't stop crying the entire time. And for whatever reason, the police decided, based on the stories, that Gabby was somehow the main perpetrator of the altercation, which it got them separated eventually. So I guess that was fine that they did end up deciding to separate them, and that was, ended up being as much for her safety as for his. But like the way that she instantly, like, she blamed herself and was like, I know, like, I'm sorry. I'm like, I don't know if she actually has OCD, but she says that, like, she has OCD and she was trying to clean and she got really upset, and like she instantly starts like blaming herself and like taking the fall. And I think people get this perception that the person that's like the most emotional is the one that's in the wrong, when that's not always true. Like, you can be calm and collected and be able to talk to authorities like perfectly and very rationally. And if anything, I feel like it's kind of a red flag if you're not emotionally elevated in that scenario at all, and you're just like, yeah, officers, it's totally her fault. Like, what? I just think it's interesting to watch that dynamic, because I think certain people sort of perceive it one way, like this somehow like proves that Gabby was the aggressor because they were so emotional. But I saw someone that had basically been told that their emotions were a problem, that they were like making somebody act that way, right? Like, sort of the whole stereotype of an abuser saying like, you made me hurt you. Like, Brian had to hurt her because she was being so emotional and irrational. And I don't want to say I necessarily like see parallels with Marilyn Manson there, but I think if we do see parallels, it's almost sort of in the way that like Marilyn Manson has basically been allowed to be silent and sort of gotten away with it. And if you believe Marilyn Manson is innocent, it doesn't matter if Marilyn Manson actually says anything or not. You get an ex-girlfriend from him from the 90s that he dated for 2 months to be like, yeah, he didn't abuse me. And suddenly everyone's like, oh, Marilyn Manson must be a good guy. And it's like, well, he hasn't actually said anything. He's just like letting other people take the bullets for him. And meanwhile, the people that are accusing him are being put on blast publicly. They're expected to make these public statements and be on video, and that's like critiqued and scrutinized if they cry too much or not enough or not in the right way or not at the right time. And it's absolutely bananas how like there is that dichotomy between like the calm sort of, I'm gonna withdraw myself from this situation, versus like the people that are more emotionally activated. And like, just gotta remember that just because somebody is like being loud or seems like they're out of control doesn't actually mean that they're the perpetrator. It can also mean that they're a victim. So, food for thought. But yeah, it is like really messed up, and I hope they find him. Like, whatever is going on with his parents in that scenario is very strange to me. Like, I think my own speculation is that his parents are like fully involved in this. I don't think they, whatever happened to Gabby, I don't think they were a part of, but everything else after the fact, I think they like either helped him leave the country or gave him a car with like blank plates and like we're like, hey, we're gonna give you a 4-day head start before we report you missing, like, get going. Like, they probably bought him a burner phone and gave him a wallet full of cash and we're just like, here, bye, there you go. Which is like, I don't understand that mindset, but maybe it says something about like, I don't know, how they raised him or something. I don't know. Anyways, I would love to know what you guys are thinking about that scenario, because it's like, it's really I feel like it's interesting that this blew up the way that it did, although I think it did because Gabby's dad had asked a lot of people to like, hey, get the word out, like, talk about it as much as you can, like, let everyone know what's going on, because it, like, originally they didn't realize that she like had been killed. Like, it was just a missing persons case, and then eventually it's sort of, all signs point to Brian, and of course we don't have any evidence or anything else that he's the one who killed Gabby. We don't know anything as far as like evidence is concerned. It's just like very suspicious behavior, but not really any evidence to back it up yet. But I mean, he went home and then immediately got a lawyer. So either he's in like the world's most like so crazy you can't believe it crime story, like in a movie where it's like somebody else killed her but they framed it to be me and there was no way I was going to be able to escape if the police caught me, so now I have to change my name and flee to Mexico. Like, I don't know, like I don't know what the other possibilities would be, but there's a lot of like weird social media things happening. I do have a video coming up with a Marilyn Manson update that I'm filming tomorrow because there was an update that came out last night at like 8 p.m. that one of the cases against him had been refiled, and today there were like some more details about it that got added. I haven't been able to find anywhere that actually shows the refiling to look through all the details, but I did like find somewhere eventually that had a lot of highlights of things that were changed or new additions, and so that's gonna be coming out here pretty shortly. Okay, Gabby Petito talk over for now. Demisexual questions here. Well, Hope Smith, if you have demisexual questions, please ask away. I would love to answer for you to the best of my ability. I'm not an expert in these things, but I do try. I've been playing with the idea of creating kink education content on Instagram. What are your thoughts on Instagram kink education? Wait, did you say you didn't use Instagram? I mean, I used to use Instagram. That's where I got started. If you want to make educational content, though, I wouldn't advise, because, like, Facebook owns Instagram, and they are very strict about things. I think it's you could use it, but looking at the metrics, Instagram is kind of a dying platform. Like, I'm not saying it's going the way of Snapchat necessarily, but a lot of people that used Instagram have gone over to TikTok. So if you want to make educational kink content that's like short form or in like a short video format, TikTok is going to be the place to do it. Now, I personally don't think I'm ever going to use TikTok. I will use it if at some point I have to, because it's like my only social media option, but it's not on my radar as something that I want to have be part of my life regularly. I have heard, oh, what was it? Was this on a live stream last week or is this on Patreon? I had someone tell me, no, this is a Patreon live stream. I had somebody tell me, listen, okay, this is what I want. If anyone here uses TikTok, please tell me what is like if there's like something kink or dating advice or poly or like anything sort of related to that you've seen on TikTok. Like, what is like the cringiest / like the most dangerous idea that you've seen be perpetrated on TikTok, because I want to know. Tell me your TikTok horror stories. The horror story that I heard earlier this week was that somebody was promoting this is not, I heard, actually now I'm remembering it. This is on Twitch. Somebody told me that on TikTok there was a woman apparently that was sharing the idea that if you want someone to like you back and want to be in a relationship with you, like what you do is you like get really close to them and then you like pull away, and then you get close again and then you pull away, and you give them like, you pay a lot of attention to them, you like give them gifts, you flatter them, everything else, and then you like withdraw all of a sudden for like no reason. And you just basically, I guess, repeat that as many times as necessary, if I'm remembering it correctly. Of course, I didn't see the TikTok. This is my interpretation of what the person told me. And so basically, it's the Dennis system from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. At least part of the Dennis system. Would you be like, demonstrate value? I'm trying to always remember what the, what does the E stand for in the Dennis system? Okay, we're looking it up. Engage physically, that's what it is. Demonstrate value, engage physically, nurture dependence, neglect emotionally, inspire hope, and separate entirely. It's like the D, the second N, and the I from the Dennis system. Like, you're like, oh, really, really like the same things. Like, we're so close. Look at me doing these nice things for you. Like, look at how I'm like a good person and I have like this social value. And then you like get really close, and then you neglect them emotionally. And then you inspire the hope that eventually you're going to like come back and want to be with them. Don't emotionally abuse people as a dating strategy. That's my advice. I feel like that shouldn't be too hard to follow, but I guess it is. I guess people don't like hearing that you can't make someone like you and you can't trick someone into liking you. Um, and if they don't like you, you should just move on instead of, I don't know, like emotionally hurting them constantly in order to get the validation you want. I don't know. Oh, what are people? Because it's just like pickup artistry, but like reformatted for a different audience, which is just so strange to me. So yeah, in summary, I don't recommend Instagram just because as a platform, you're not going to reach as many people that way. And I feel like like I have really detached on most social media except for Twitter from a lot of the kink community because it just like it gets so petty and like it gets like I don't care about a person like how many collars they own or what shop is stealing designs from where. Like I don't care. Like I'm not 12. I don't have time to worry about these things. So if you want to like reach more people and kind of go to where the most people are sort of like even perpetuating misinformation, like I think TikTok is going to be the great format for that. I also just don't want to dance on camera. That's like the other reason I have for not wanting to do TikTok is oh, the dancing. I mean, I can dance. I like dancing. I don't want to video myself doing it and making content for it that people are going to download and that I'm never going to be able to erase. No, thank you. Do you have any resources about where to learn about piercing play? I don't. There's an older book that was published about it, but I don't recommend it. Piercing is something that is complicated to do. Like, if you're learning how to do piercing for real, like, you do apprenticeships. Like, you do, like, long-term in-person learning. Of course, if you just want to learn how to do, like, play piercing for BDSM, and you don't want to give someone, like, a semi-permanent septum piercing or whatever, like, you can learn how to do that, but learn about it in person, learn about it from somebody that knows what the fuck they're doing, and practice and practice and practice. Like, I don't think a book or an online resource is going to be able to teach you how to do it, and I know that real life classes are hard to access right now. I think piercing play is hard to learn about in general, but, like, I don't know what else to tell you. Like, you can't learn how to put a needle through somebody's flesh appropriately over Zoom. Like, I just don't think you can do it. Like, I just don't think that's gonna happen. Not that it's impossible necessarily. Like, I think if you're sort of you know the basics and you're learning kind of maybe specific techniques with like patterns or something, like that's one thing. But I can't see how you could do that over Zoom and like because it's a very like it's very tactile. It's very tactile, and you can't get that tactile feedback over video. How have you been? I have been pretty good. YouTube has been, of course, very crazy this month. They almost wiped my channel from existence, and it took a while to recover from that in terms of like time and also emotionally. And things are, as far as I can tell, fingers crossed, knock on wood, everything is more or less back to normal. Haven't had any other issues with YouTube. Haven't had any weird things happening as far as like I don't know. I'm gonna turn my volume a little bit. I feel like I'm a little bit quiet, but let me know if it's too loud now for some reason. So yeah, I've been doing pretty well. Okay, I'll answer your question in a second, George Cook, when I finish this one. But it is, do you like to ride motorcycles? So yeah, like everything as far as that's fine. I think I've finally kind of gotten my sleep schedule under control because when everything with YouTube was happening earlier this month, I was going to bed, if I went to bed, at like 6 a.m., 7 a.m. And now I'm getting to the point where I go to bed at like 2:30. So improvement. I'm not waking up at like 2 p.m. anymore, and it makes it a lot easier to be productive. But it's not been an easy journey, I will say that. So moving on to, do you like to ride motorcycles? I've actually never ridden a motorcycle before. I've known several people that own motorcycles, but even they don't really ride them. So I've never been on a motorcycle before. I like the idea. I like the idea of riding a motorcycle. I can understand the appeal of it. But I also like living. And so I just, unless it was like, I live in the city, and so there are a non-zero number of fatal motorcycle accidents that happen around here, particularly around highway entrances and exits. And so I am like not really interested in being a part of that. I think if there was like a big open road where there were no other people, like if I was in Montana or something where the speed limit is 90 miles an hour, and after you get out of the mountains it's just like flat road for 300 miles, like I would totally be open to doing it. But like, I don't know if here's a very good idea. It's not, the weather's not very good, and the roads are not very good, and it's a city, it's busy, it's congested, people don't always look where they're going when they drive. Like, I don't know. I would just have to be very cautious about doing it. But I like the idea in general. I'm not opposed to it. I just I'm not like that big of a thrill seeker, I think. Like, I'm not really into like, I don't know, like skydiving. I don't really like Ferris wheels even. Like Ferris wheels are too intense for me. I don't like roller coasters. Like anything like that that involves like heights or like intense speeds, I'm like not super fond of. It doesn't, not as fun as it could be for me. I used the Streamlab a few times, but last time I don't think you saw it. Does it have to be over a certain dollar amount to alert you? It should work for anything over like $1 or $2. Because I know we've gotten alerts so far tonight that have worked. Let me check. Maybe there's something going on with Streamlabs. Maybe it's not like connected properly. Let me check. I will verify. Give me a second. Okay, let me look at what I'm doing. Okay, well I got the one that's from David Brooks, so that went through. I'm just checking my Streamlabs. Yeah, I want to continue with YouTube. Okay, it looks like everything is functional. We got one earlier, so it should be working. Yeah, but my minimum for it showing up is $1. But I know that $3 and $5 have worked, so there you go. And maybe it's your payment didn't go through? I don't know. Okay, so I think this is in relation to our earlier conversation about why there's no female dominatrixes. It's partly because nobody wants to really give up real power, and there's something doubly annoying about being forced to role play having power the sub often has for real in actual life. Oh, yeah, I can see that. So it's sort of like, you know, you're role playing being dominant over a man, but like obviously it's the man that really has all the like actual like real power, and that doesn't actually like feel empowering to do, basically. Yeah, I can see that. How can a young submissive man like me attract older dominating women? I truly aspire to end up at a ruthless straw woman's feet with my infinite love. The best thing that you can probably do is to get out there and to be honest and upfront with what you are looking for. I think there can be a tendency sometimes for some people to pretend to be into things that they're not, or conceal what they are really looking for in order to be able to be with someone, just to be able to be with someone, even if they're not like technically really compatible. But if you're not like FetLife, if you haven't looked into being part of local community groups, if you're like a submissive man, I really don't recommend looking for a female dominant partner online, because my limited understanding, not being a man that is part of the dating world, is when you are looking on like dating apps, for example, there are a lot of catfishes, a lot of bots, a lot of like fake profiles that you're never going to get responses from. And I feel like that is just, it's more effort than it's worth. And also, I don't want anyone to like lose their money or get their identity stolen or worse. So I would not necessarily look like directly online for people, but you can use places like FetLife, like well, I guess you could use OkCupid is better than like other places you might go to. Excuse me. So yeah, I feel like FetLife is the place to start, but really I think the best shot you have of meeting someone that's like a real dominant person, not someone that's just gonna try and get your money, not someone that's a catfish, is being part of a local community, connecting with people in person or somewhere that lives around you, and that's going to be more likely to create like close connections. Thoughts on the practicality of running a kink academy? Okay, I'm almost done with this question, Erica, and then I will get to yours next. So, yeah, and I just think like having realistic expectations and sort of remembering to treat women, even if they are dominant, as real people. I think that is like the number one complaint I hear from dominant women that sort of turns them off from people to not want to pursue anything with them further, is they get a lot of messages, first of all, typically, and a lot of them immediately start with like the role play, mistress this, dominatrix that, please let me suck your toes, please let me like lay your feet while you walk on me. Like they get a lot of messages like that, and like you get treated like you're a need fulfillment machine, and that's not good for most people to feel that way. And so if you want to like actually meet a dominant woman, it starts by treating them as like women, or more fundamentally as people first, and then like getting into the kink stuff. And I think you're more likely to find someone if you like make good connections locally, and even like meet a friend of a friend, or somebody says, oh, I think so and so would be like a good match for you. Like that tends to be where a lot of like genuine connection happens. But back to Erica's questions. Thoughts on the practicality of running a kink academy. So there is actually a website that I believe is ran by Princess Kali that is called the Kink Academy. I'm assuming what you're referring to is not like an online training program. If that's what you're asking about, like please let me know, because I think that's a slightly different answer. But if you are talking about like an in-person training facility for like, you come here 6 like nights of the week for 6 months, and we'll train you how to be a perfect submissive, kind of a deal where it's like an intensive program. I have heard of a couple places that do that as like a standalone thing. I don't think it's like a good business model necessarily to have as like a sole thing bringing in money to like keep a space operational. I think if you're going to do something like that, it would have to be like an adjunct to some sort of existing dungeon with a bunch of dominatrixes at it, or as a part of like some other kind of local space. Like I don't think you can do that just by itself and keep everything running. I think the issues with the practicality would come from, I think everyone has blind spots when it comes to kink and like what they know and what their perspective is. And I think it's good when you're starting out to be able to experience a lot of different perspectives. And I think the issue with running an academy is that can sort of, or any sort of training program, regardless of what it's titled, is it can be very like, even on accident, sort of one true way where it's like, well, this is the way the academy taught me, and so that's how it has to be. And it's really hard, unless you're very careful about it, to not accidentally create that mindset. All right, let me get... About to have a blanket. Okay, that's better. I feel like I'm much closer to the microphone now. I like this better. Do I actually need this blanket? I just like having it near me. I like blankets, okay? Don't shame me. I will not be shamed for my love of blankets. So, yeah, I think it's sort of like, how would people sort of, I think people would treat it as sort of a like, okay, well now I know everything I need to know, and now I got everything under my belt. I think there's the issue of making sure you're not missing any particular perspectives. Like, yeah, if everyone that like teaches at your academy is white and has straight kink relationships, like you're missing a lot of perspectives there that could be important to students. It can feel alienating, like if you're a person of color that's trying to learn how to do kink and you go to this academy and it's all white people and everyone else that's a teacher is white, like it's going to send certain signals, you know? So you want to make sure you're not missing out any particular perspectives, I think. And it's just sort of like, you have to, I think the main, like, sort of practicality issue is you have to make sure that the people that are teaching are, like, good people that are actually ethical. And the trouble that I think I've been noticing a lot of is there are sort of, like, there's actually sort of two groups. So, like, the first group are, like, the people that are obviously, like, not practicing what we would consider in the modern day to be, like, ethical BDSM. Like, they don't care about safe words. They think that all females are inherently submissive. They think that, you know, they think that all kink should be exactly one way. Like, people are just, like, obviously, are not up to speed necessarily. And, you know, they probably have numerous consent violations. They don't see any issues with playing only with 18-year-old novice submissives that have never done BDSM before. Like, the list goes on and on and on. However, there are a lot of people that, outside of obviously being kind of shitty, are people that have a veneer of, like, they know how to talk about consent. They pay sort of lip service to some important community ideals around communication and negotiation, but what has ended up being revealed is you have a lot of people that can pay that lip service, but then in their practical, like, actual everyday relationships, or even sometimes in classes, like, they exhibit inappropriate or unethical behavior that goes against those stated values. Be it, you know, sort of encouraging diversity, and then they only ever play with, like, 18-year-old novice, like, white female submissives, or they sort of say that they think consent is really important, but then they have, you know, a half dozen people that come out and I'll say, like, hey, this person, like, didn't really negotiate with me. They didn't respect my safe word. They told me that, like, real submissives don't have safe words. Like, whatever it is, it comes out in some way that they have ethics that they state that don't match what they actually do. And because it happens so often with the people that sort of speak the loudest, it's really hard to find people that both have the time and the energy and also sort of the name recognition to offer sort of a benefit to a kink academy to be able to, like, actually teach and be good at it. And even if they're not doing something that's, like, consent related and they haven't, you know, even if they haven't violated anyone, they can still be, like, kind of sketchy. Like, I think Kat Black has a video where she talked about an interaction that she had with a really well-known educator in California, and I'm, like, 98% sure I know who it is that she's talking about. She doesn't name them in the video, but in it she talks about how, like, even though they're the author, they're really, really big local educator, they run their own events, they're sort of, like, local to national level star power, they had really inappropriate interactions with Kat. And, like, that happens. Like, it wasn't, like, a consent violation in scene kind of a thing, but it was like oh, you don't know how to talk to trans people. Oh, you don't understand, like, how black women, like, need to be spoken to. And I say that in the sense of, like, you know those people, like, don't understand why, like, black women don't like it when random strangers touch their hair? Like, that kind of shit, where it's like, oh, wow, your hair looks so pretty, and then they just, like, reach out and touch it, like, that kind of, like, level of shit, where it's like, you don't understand why you should do that. And, like, especially when it's, like, touch violation like that, it's like, come on, dude, what are you doing? And I don't think he actually did that specific thing in the video, but just, like, a general example of, like, something that's not just, like, they violated my consent in scene or didn't respect a safe word, but it's still like, oh, yeah, that indicates maybe some, like, perspective issues, I guess you could say. So, yeah, I think overall, like, if there was a way to run something like that ethically, where, like, you could genuinely vet everyone and you knew they were, like, really solid people and you could get the name out there and there wasn't issues with, like, running it as a business, I think that would be really cool to have. And I know a lot of people would want to have something like that, but I also I think it's also good sort of that the model we have now is learning from multiple people and many different sources, because that sort of prevents the issues that can come up when you're only ever learning everything you know from one person. And I know for some people it does work. Like, I believe it's Mistress Couple is someone that I know of that actually was like fully trained as a submissive at a place called I was gonna say the chateau, but it's not that. La Domaine SMR. That's what it is. La Domaine SMR. That's what it is. She was trained there as a submissive, and eventually through that she ended up becoming a dominant as well at a different point in her journey. And so I know there are people that have kind of learned through that format, but we have the internet. Is basically what I would say. I think it will always be appealing to like a small minority of people, or a really nice fantasy for a lot of people, but the actual like practicality of running something like that is probably going to be an issue from like more from an ethics standpoint, I think. Oh, okay. Great question from Gorzak. With multiple poly members of a relationship cohabitating, wouldn't conflict tend to triangulate all members? Do people take sides, or is there effort to stay neutral by those not most involved? I think, well, I guess I would think about it like if you have 3 roommates and like the roommates get in a fight with each other, like do they triangulate the other roommates? You know? Like, I think it is a possibility. It also depends on the dynamics of like how that cohabitation is happening. Like, is it 2 married couples sharing a home together? Is it one guy that has 7 women that all date him and they don't date anyone else and don't date each other? Is it a V triad where it's 2 people dating one person that don't date each other? Is it like a foursome where everyone's all dating each other at the same time, like equally? Like, there's so many different ways that poly can happen when you have like a group cohabitating together, that I think it's hard to give some kind of like concrete answer on how likely that is to be. I think that there's sort of the ideal, which is, yeah, like you don't want to get involved in your partner's stuff. Like, you don't want to necessarily like push someone one way or the other, or try to sort of gang up on one person. But even with that ideal in mind, I think it's something that people are aware of. Like, most of the poly books that I've read that talk about like cohabitating and like having multiple people living together, like sort of talk about conflict resolution and things like that. So I think it is a thing that people are aware of can be an issue. But I think in the reality, I think it can happen. I think there are relationship dynamics where, like, let's say, like, guy A is sort of like the one man in the household, and he has like 4 women that are all dating him, that don't date each other, that are all also living with him, and maybe they're all like kind of vying for his attention. Like, it's kind of like a sister wife scenario, but like polyamory and not polygamy. They might like guy A maybe gets in a fight with girl A, and maybe he'll sort of try to get girl B, C, and D to be on his side in the argument, because maybe them also doing so has the added benefit of like being like higher in his esteem because they agree with him, and that makes him feel good. And that might not even be malicious. It might just be sort of a like, hey, I want people to be on my side, and like, come be on my side, please, like take my side in this argument. It's complicated though. Okay, we got another question from George. I promise I will get to it. I do want to finish answering this question on polyamory first, but your question should stay up for a while, so not to worry on that one. I think it's one of those hidden issues within polyamory. I think when you read literature about polyamory and you listen to people talk about it, there can be a lot of sugar coating that happens to like convince people that it's like an okay thing to do, that it is hey, like polyamory could be ethical, and we all really care about each other, and it's about like communication and honesty and truth and dealing with jealousy and yada yada. And like the actual like like real life version of doing it is a lot messier, and people, they get messy, they make mistakes, they don't always act perfectly, they respond irrationally, they are maybe acting out of places from like attachment trauma, they're acting out from issues with undiagnosed or untreated mental health issues, they are lashing out, or they are sort of implementing like maladaptive coping mechanisms. They are doing a lot potentially that could means that they're not doing like perfectly ideal poly, and that inevitably ends up hurting people, unfortunately. But I think sort of to get more to the heart of the question, and sort of wrap this up, is I don't think it has like an inherent tendency to triangulate all members, if you're doing it in an ethical way. I think if you're sort of like kind of just like guessing at how to do polyamory, and you're like sort of just like, yeah, let's move this other girlfriend into your house, like it's gonna go great, and you're not really doing it in like a conscious, thoughtful way, I think that is where triangulation would be the most likely to happen. But if it's like somebody that has more experience in poly and has taken the time to read about it and examine themselves internally, then it's going to be like less likely that that sort of inappropriate pattern happens. But great question. I think that's a really insightful one. Okay, back to George's question. Since BDSM is by its nature an unconventional sexual erotic intimacy framework, lots of slashes in there, do you think BDSM becoming mainstream could be something that kills its appeal? The age-old question. Can kink go mainstream? And if it does, is that a bad thing? I think that we've already kind of seen this to some extent with like open heterosexual engagement in anal and oral sex. Like that used to be very much the domain of like the kinky, weird, freaky people, and at some point in the last like, I don't know, 40 years, I haven't looked this up, when this became a trend, it kind of got adopted to be more accepted in heterosexual relationships. That wasn't like it wasn't an abomination anymore to like do anal. And so like anal's kind of gone from being this like, and it wasn't even BDSM necessarily, because it was like before kink was like a label that people had kind of adopted as a community. It was this like, it sort of went from being this like super perverse, very deviant thing to like kind of normal. And I could see that sort of happening with certain kink activities, and they kind of get reincorporated or get incorporated at all, into sort of being vanilla-ish. But I think they would maybe only really progress to being ish unless there was some big social change that like completely upended how we do relationships, like the social structures of power that we have, and everything else that's sort of like the baseline experience for people that like feeds into what makes BDSM what it is. And I don't know if it would kill its appeal. I think there are people that would argue that BDSM is already mainstream, that because of 50 Shades of Grey, 365 Days, bonding, various Netflix shows, movies, TV, like it's already kind of gone mainstream. And I think there's sort of maybe this like diminishing returns aspect to it, where like it gets sort of mainstream-ish up to a point, and throughout that part of the graph it gets more membership as it becomes slowly more mainstream. But then if it becomes too mainstream, it like loses its appeal to some extent. But I think if like certain acts within kink speak to you, if certain ways of having relationships speak to you, you probably don't only do them because they're like taboo and unconventional. Like I don't think you can have a sustainable like kink relationship that is only based on I do this because it's unconventional and weird and taboo. Because if that's you, then yeah, like as kink becomes more mainstream, like you are going to have that appeal be lost. But if you are somebody that really needs like structure and clear authority in your relationship, if you are somebody that has like an inherent enjoyment of painful sensations, those are going to be enjoyable to you regardless of how many other people are doing it. Like it's not something that's based on like society approving of it or not. It maybe doesn't have the same edge to it. It maybe doesn't have the same sort of like, ooh, we're doing something like naughty to it. But is that a tractor? What was that? Diesel truck, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, I think there's sort of a yes and a no. And it's definitely a debate we've been having for a quite long time on the internet, off the internet. Oh no, either BDSM going mainstream is going to kill it, or it's already gone mainstream and now it's going to die, or this thing's going to make it go mainstream and that's going to cause it to die. And it still hasn't died yet. So, like, I'm fairly optimistic about BDSM's chances to survive going mainstream. But I think, well, at the same time, though, I do think there is part of, like, BDSM as a community that is based on it being somewhat, like, deviant from normal society. So I think, I guess what I would say is, like, if it goes, like, totally mainstream, it gets completely, like, saturated in being mainstream, then I think the activities will still exist. Maybe we won't call them BDSM. Like, they're gonna get, like, vanilla-ified names, essentially, is what I would say. And, like, BDSM as a community structure, rather than, like, a set of activities, would be the thing that goes away. Does that make sense? Good question, though. Okay, we got something from LJ Clark. Dear Evie, I appreciate...
LJ Clark donated $20.
You can hear
Dear
it.
Evie, I appreciate all the information you've given us all about kink, fetish, and BDSM. How are you doing? Have you seen the movie The Story of O? In my previous relationship, I was forced to watch it and found it disturbing. What are your thoughts?
I have... Actually, I've never watched, I've never read The Story of O. I have read, or not read, I have watched a similar French? Let me look this up. I don't remember what it's called. Oh, Belle de Jour. That's what it was. I have watched Belle de Jour, which I think is at least maybe inspired by Story of O, and I know people that have been forced to watch The Secretary, 50 Shades of Grey, in your case, The Story of O. Anytime you have to force someone to watch something, it's probably a bad idea and not gonna end well. So I would recommend not doing that, and it's perfectly valid that you find that disturbing or upsetting. I can see why, you know, not having watched the film, but being kind of vaguely aware of its contents, how even if you are kinky, part of that could be disturbing. Like a lot of people kind of go back to Marquis de Sade as, like, an inspiration for a lot of kink things, or future writers of things that became more, like, mainstream within BDSM, not in larger society. Sort of ideas that kind of became part of larger BDSM conversations. But, like, still reading Marquis de Sade is, like, disturbing in a lot of cases. That's, like, because he's, like, the writing is disturbing. That's kind of how it is. But yeah, thank you for asking how I've been doing. Yeah, I guess I didn't get to finish answering that question. I am stressed out about finishing things I need to finish. I spent, like, just a week, like, fighting with YouTube about my, like, channel, and, like, that just being my sole focus, like, 24 hours a day for, like, a couple days. And, like, the focus of the majority of my day for the rest of those days. So I am just trying to really recover from that and get everything done I need to get done, and that is fairly stressful, but I think I have good coping mechanisms in place to be able to deal with that. But thank you for asking. All right. Okay, Hope asked, what can you do when you don't relate to being submissive anymore? Where do you go from there? I think that depends on, well, actually it kind of doesn't depend if you're in a relationship or not. One option is that you can just step away from it. Sometimes we get burnt out on things, we get tired of doing things, and it sort of loses its luster, right? Like, a pasta can be your favorite dish, and you could swear up and down, I want to have pasta every day for the rest of my life. I want my only meal to be pasta. And eventually, 2 years into only eating pasta, you'd be like, you know what? I kind of want to have a potato instead. I kind of want to not eat pasta. Like, I don't really taste it anymore. I used to like pasta, and now I've just had it so much I don't really taste it anymore. And it's perfectly valid to, like, take a break from engaging with submission and refocus on other hobbies or try different things and come back to it later. And I think having that refresh is actually fairly important and not something that a lot of people talk about. I think a lot of people sort of have this idea that once you have started doing BDSM, you can never stop doing it. And if you stop at any point, it's like, oh, you weren't really kinky then. And it's like, no, sometimes either for like practical life reasons, financial reasons, work reasons, whatever else, you might have to step away. And I think that can also be because, you're not feeling as into it as you used to. And it is possible to have too much of a good thing, even if you still really love the idea of this. Like, I think it's worth taking that time away from it, and I think it's much easier to understand what your honest feelings about something is when you have that distance from it. So I think if you take some time away from it, that can give you a space to sort of rationally assess, like, am I doing things that are fulfilling to me? Am I in the kind of relationship I want to have? Have my opinions about certain things changed or not? Do I want to go in a different direction? Do I want to change how I'm doing this? Like, maybe you have been going off after like a lot of like service-oriented submission and you've been doing that for a really long time. Well, like, maybe you're getting burnt out because like with that step back, you've been able to realize like, oh, like I'm really feeling pulled in this different direction in my submission, and I haven't had like room or time to explore that, and like that would be now what is fulfilling for me. And it might also be that like, hey, you check in with yourself and you realize like, hey, like maybe power exchange isn't really for me. Motorcycle guy, a little early tonight. So I would say that you might also realize that maybe you want to step back from being submissive. Maybe you're more of a bottom. Maybe you're a switch. Maybe you only want a very particular type of power exchange. There are so many possibilities here. And I know I'm sure that suggestion of just like stepping away isn't helpful. I'm sure, like it'd be ideal to be able to like stay in the scene and keep doing stuff like while like feeling like you don't relate to it anymore. And if that's what you want to do, I guess you sort of do the introspection without stepping away first, right? Like you try to be honest with yourself and your feelings about like what you feel motivated towards, if at all, what sort of things you want to try you haven't done yet, and going towards whatever feels like it would be the most fulfilling. But you can't like force an emotion like that. You can't force yourself to want to do something that you don't want to do anymore, that you are not feeling engaged with. Now, if you are in a relationship and you do have a dominant and you have all these agreements and contracts and rules and structure, obviously you can't step away from it. Like when you're married, you can't be like, time out, we're not going to be married for the next 2 weeks and then we go back to being married in 2 weeks so I can like evaluate what's going on. Like you can't like in some dynamics, if that's like something you negotiate with your partner, like you can decide to de-escalate your relationship and temporarily stop the DS. And I know that some people do that, particularly when they are having like really intense like physical or mental health issues. At the same time though, I also know like probably more people that advocate for maintaining the structure because it gives that stability to have that like through line in the relationship, even when you are dealing with really intense things, even if the degree of the relationship is reduced, but it still is there. But if you do want to like sort of maintain your relationship while also sort of understanding what you want to get out of things, I think that starts with an honest conversation with your partner or partners that is like, hey, like I really like being in a relationship with you. I have so many like great memories of us doing kinky stuff together and I want that to keep happening. And lately I just want to tell you that I've kind of been struggling with feeling as attached to my submissive side, and that's not your fault or not anything that you're doing. I'm just kind of struggling with that and like would want your help in maybe like dealing with that or trying to figure out maybe like where that's coming from. And you can involve your partners or partner in the process of trying to figure out what's going on, how to sort of troubleshoot it, what you can try out besides that. So it all can come in so many different directions, but really like my first option, my first thing I would recommend if you're not in a relationship is just to take that step back to reflect and not try to force yourself to be into something when you need that reset from it. You know, I think that's perfectly acceptable. I did not know that October was Locktober. I guess is that chastity month? Maybe I'll do my video on chastity in October. Only time will tell. Only time will tell. Interesting topic. I'm definitely open to the idea that the ratio might not be as real as people think. I think anytime you're online, you're going to get a very skewed perspective on like what anything actually looks like not just kink, but you know, online you get this idea that BDSM is nothing but like hot 20 somethings that are, you know, skinny and healthy and able-bodied and so on, when the actual reality is like kink is a pretty like clear slice of the demographic of the place where you live. Like there are white people, there are POC, there are queer people, straight people, abled people, people that have a disability. Like there are all kinds of different combinations of humans that do kink. And in the same way, like people get this idea that, oh my god, there's no one out there that's a dom. And it turns out actually a lot of doms like don't loudly advertise that they are when they're female dominant, because when they do that they get 100 inappropriate to outright offensive and dangerous messages from people that don't know how to rein themselves in. So an unfortunate side effect of how some people choose to act. Oh, okay, so good question from Max. Hi, Evie. I'm having a hard time going back to a local club. The DM is predatory and iffy. His history is known, but the other DMs don't care about it. I want to still explore kink, but IDK what to do. So does this person like DM at all the parties? Or are there like specific parties you could go to that are maybe hosted by a different organization at the same space? Because at least how things work where I live, I know this is not going to be the case everywhere, which is why I'm bringing it up just as an idea, is where I live, at least when people used to organize things, we still don't have like kink parties happening here regularly. I cry, but I understand. We had a community space that was like primarily the events there were ran through one organization, but there were also two other organizations that essentially rented the space to be able to host their own events in. They just like rented the space and used the equipment, but all the DMs, all of the organizers, everyone that advertised the parties, everything was ran independently of who actually owned the venue. So I don't know if maybe there's like other parties at the same like local venue that are just like at the same space but not affiliated with this particular group of people at all. That could be a possibility. If that's not a possibility, like I just feel like it's easy. I feel like it's safer to not be around. Sorry, a DM is a dungeon monitor for people who don't know. Thank you. I've realized that I've said a thing and not everyone knows what it is. So I would say it's probably better to not engage in something than to be around people that do it in a dangerous way and sort of enable dangerous behavior. Because like even if that DM isn't predatory towards you, like that still kind of to me indicates a culture of like being permissive of bad behavior. And then like even if you're doing a scene with someone else, like are they going to be as on the ball as they need to be about your safety when you're doing a scene? And like, you know, if heaven forbid, and I hope this would never happen to anyone listening, like if you had a scene go wrong or somebody didn't listen to a safe word or someone violated your consent, like are they going to take that seriously? Because if they don't with this person, like why would they with you, you know? So I understand the concern. It sounds like you've at least like brought it to their attention, and I guess they don't care. If I'm assuming like DMs don't generally operate independently. If there's like a rung above him, like the organizer, the owner of the space, something, like if you can communicate your discomfort to like the next level up away from him, like maybe you get more information about what to do, or like just get some kind of something to maybe correct the issue. But if they're not willing to do that, and they're in that space and that's your only option, like, you can't force them to not be there. Like, it's not really a whole lot you can do about that particular club, I guess, other than looking to go somewhere else. Or I guess if there is a possibility of being able to rent the space for a different organization that's not affiliated with them, like trying to find another organization or being part of a different group of people that maybe like would like be able to actually run an event at that space. But yeah, it's not easy to be in for sure. Where did you get the light panels behind you from? So the string lights are from Amazon, and what is behind it is a tapestry, which is also from Amazon. But it's not actually one piece together. I actually, you can kind of see the very edge of it a little bit, but I basically used fancy clothespins to hang it up and then put the lights sort of through that, which I very much enjoy the effect. It's very nice, and it gives the space a very cozy vibe, I think. And it's rainbow, and it has a Christmas light option, which I'm very much looking forward to for a couple months from now. I do like this background I made, though. I do like this streaming setup with like the wallpaper and I feel like the roses and the purple and the gray black. Like, it's very me. I like it. Oh, yeah, the stereotype about, like, submissive men that don't want to, like, be with women that have switched at any point. Yeah, that sounds like the whole, if she's been with another guy, I'm not doing anything with her type, or at least it has some influence. Oh, absolutely. There are a lot of through lines between certain sexist stereotypes and ideas and that getting into male submissives BDSM, because it turns out you can't entirely separate those two. There is very much the titular Madonna whore complex, as we say. Evie, do you like the chair that you use? I do. I got it on sale at PAX, and that is the best time to get a chair, is when it is on sale. I think it's a little big for me because it's designed for gamer boys and not gamer girls. But I can sit on this fully while crossing my legs and not hitting either one of the armrests. So I actually think that that's maybe good. I like being able to sit cross-legged, and then it means Bandit can be fully on my lap and not have to worry about falling off, and that's also good. So I do like it overall. It is pretty comfortable. I do sort of need to, actually, I'm thinking about it. I have adjusted the backrest, so now my lower back will not be destroyed by sitting in this chair. Yeah, I've had this for years, and it's lasted me very well, so I do enjoy it. Oh, me and my Dom got some merch from you. My aftercare long sleeve is the best. Oh, I'm so glad you like it. I very much enjoy the merch that I have made over the years, and I'm glad that people enjoy it. I need to like get some for myself and order some because I need some more like wintry, cozy around the house clothes. So I'm gonna order some stuff for my own shop probably sooner, and it may make an appearance at some point in live streams or videos. I think emotional mirroring is really important to people. If you're activated and the other person you're talking to is not, it can feel dehumanizing and make you want to make them feel like you feel. Oh, like I see what you're saying. Yeah, like it would almost sort of like, are you saying it would like ratchet up the other person's response? Like they just get more agitated because the other person is staying like kind of in gray rock mode, essentially. Do you agree with Midori's take on Dom/sub sadist/masochist? I don't know what Midori's take is. If you can tell me what it is, I can tell you if I agree or not, but I am not familiar with what. I'm assuming that's something to do with the separation between those things. I'm not familiar with that. I once phrased it as, I don't like someone I'm with to be uncomfortable in a way I didn't intend. Exactly. That is what being, I think, an ethical sadist is about. Is, yeah, discomfort is fun, but I want it to be when I want it, like when it's intentional and on purpose, not just like because I want to be an asshole to people around me and like have an excuse to do that, you know? Okay. Late to the table, enjoying another Patreon that I'm a part of. Oh, yeah, have fun. No worries. I mean, the fun part about these live streams is they do stay up for a while and you can join at any time. So glad you can make it. Yes, exactly. What is Midori's take? I want to know. Yeah, Vimeo's chat is just like it's the option. It has like the reason I use Vimeo is it has like far and above the most security features of any and the most like storage capacity of any of the other non-YouTube streaming services, but they do not have necessarily the best chat functionality. Ooh, I was sour. This is like vitamin C. It's not like an emergency. It's like it's from Pacifica actually, which is like a beauty company. They had water supplements that they're like this is like a vitamin C beauty supplement, but I take it because it has vitamin C in it because I'm vegan, so I take iron pills. And if you're vegan and you need to take iron, or you're a person that is anemic for whatever reason, this is really good. It's iron, bisglycinate, I think is what it is. It's from Solgar. I got it on Amazon. And I take that and I drink some vitamin C with it because science shows that taking vitamin C with iron helps increase the absorption, and that is how I have bones. The end. That's how I have bones left in my body. Those iron supplements. Although really, it's like blood and other things too. So important. Now you know about that, I guess, if you wanted to. Love from Scotland. Love your videos. Ooh, we love Scotland. Thank you, S. Wallace. I've actually been to Scotland before. It was beautiful, but chilly for the summertime. And I didn't enjoy that part. I don't think I could live there, but I did like visiting. There was so much Jell-O in the 50s where it shouldn't be. There truly was. And I have seen pictures, and I am glad I was not around then for the horrors of salad Jell-O. Oh, yeah, see, thank you. So, Sadistic Tom says, I'm in my 60s and enjoy listening in on a regular basis. Always learn something despite having been around so long. That's excellent. Thank you for being here. Okay, good question. So, Zernicki, I think, the one with the pinky and the brain icon, we love it, says, you think polyamory will ever be accepted in the mainstream? I always thought it was odd you could love many family members, foods, books, but only one partner. You know, I've thought about this, and I feel like in a lot of ways, as sort of sad as it is, mainstream acceptance, I think, sort of starts from, in a lot of places, from like popular media and conversation, and we are getting like 2% of that. Like, we're getting, like, Tana Mojo dating Bella Thorne and Jake Paul at the same time. And, like, that's, like, the extent of, like, open relationship polyamory conversations we're having. Maybe, like, an article in Cosmopolitan. I think there is one TV show that sort of features polyamory that's on, like, Stars or something I've heard about. But, you know, compare that to BDSM, where we've had all of these movies, books, TV shows, erotica, countless conversations, even on like the Today Show, The View, like it's all over. Like people have talked about this and it's much more readily acceptable. And I think part of that is because, and this is going to be kind of social science-y, wibbly wobbly kind of waffling, if you will. I think BDSM in a lot of ways, because you can make it look very close to what is already socially acceptable, but with like a couple of things added in, it is easier to adapt that. And the motorcycle man is throttling them. Are you gonna do it? Are you just going like, like, decide if you're gonna go or not, dude. Let me finish my sentence. There is sort of this mainstreamification, vanillification of like, which is just like recuperation is the actual like social science term. Like BDSM in a lot of ways can be recuperated into like mainstream society, because like look at 50 Shades of Grey, right? And like, and how closely that sort of relates to a lot of like social ideas around like this like strong, like independent, wealthy man, and this like demure, submissive woman who's like feisty but not too feisty that ultimately sort of like goes along with his will, and they get married and they have a family and XYZ. Like it is like still very much in a lot of ways can be used to reinforce or affirm or at least conform to current social structures of like family and dynamics of power. Whereas with polyamory, I think there's a lot more of that is very like outwardly sort of bucking power trends. I think like within BDSM relationships, you get a lot of bucking of like social like socially acceptable ways of having relationships, but like because of it, like examples like we have of 50 Shades of Grey and other things where like you can basically recuperate it to be like, again, like almost any other kind of ideal relationship with a few things added on. Like you can't really do that with poly, because poly is just the way it is structured is like not the nuclear family. Like it is not about having a man and a wife and 2 kids in this household and living independently. Like the way that you structure polyamory, outside of maybe just like that, but then adding only one other person, like there is no way to have that like fit in nicely to the slot that it would socially have to fit into to be, I think, as accepted as like sort of BDSM has kind of become in a lot of ways. And not to say that BDSM is fully accepted, because it totally hasn't been, but poly is definitely like more than a few steps behind in that department. I think until, I guess there's Professor Marston and the Wonder Woman is like another sort of example of a polyamorous relationship, although it's like sort of an area where the relationship starts with pretty dubious consent. So I don't think it's like necessarily like good poly from the very start, but it is in there, I suppose. Now, having said that, I think until we get sort of more movies and TV shows and larger conversations around it, like that mainstreamness isn't going to happen. And I think if it got to the point of being mainstream where people were advocating for like plural marriage, like that would become a very deep issue, and it would be something that there would have to be very strong community presence for advocating for, in the way the LGBT community had to advocate for gay marriage and had to do that for a very, very long time. And I just don't think politically we're in a place where that's viable to happen. So I guess what it also sort of depends on like how mainstream you have to go in order to count as being mainstream. But I think when you understand the idea, like you get it, right? Like you don't have to have one best friend, you don't have to have one favorite food, you don't have to have like only one person you ever love your whole life, you don't have to have only one favorite book. Like I get it, and you get those examples, but I think everything else about it is so much more deviant from the norm that's harder to recuperate, that it is very difficult to make it like palatable for the mainstream without running into a bunch of issues. Because like BDSM you can make presentable by basically just turning it into every other version of a white women's bodice ripper novel, but with a slightly different twist to it, whereas like polyamory is much more difficult to do that with. But yeah, I think about that a lot, because I wonder, and I think like BDSM is much more accepted and known about than polyamory is, because like, and I talk about this in a video that I have coming out soon, like I sort of vaguely knew what kink was and what asexuality was like way before I had any idea that polyamory was an option. Like kink has been something that Like, it's been talked about in the mainstream media. There's so many books about it, accessible fan fictions for young people. Like, it's all over the place. And we don't have that as much for polyamory. So polyamory I had to, like, find out about from someone else. And it was, like, a light bulb moment of, like, oh, that's, like, a thing people can do? Like, what? And I wasn't, like, young when that happened. I was, like, 20. I had already been around for a while. I had already been an adult for a couple of years. And I still didn't even know that it was a possibility. So, you know, it's funny how that happens. All right. Oh my gosh. Okay, we are already at 7:35. Okay, we have 25 minutes left. Nobody panic. I will try to get to as many things as I can. But again, if you do want to make sure I answer your question, we do have the option of a super chat. So please check that out. Link to it is below. Let me see here. On one point of the culture war, I remain firm. It's pronounced nuclear. 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 Is that what it is? Nuclear? Not nuclear. I don't know what the linguists have to say about that. I'm gonna stay out of that debate. I remember when BDSM was a new term used in classified personal ads. Oh, the days of newspaper personal ads. Such a different time. Just a different way of finding people, but I guess people still technically do stuff like that with dating profiles. It's just different formats. Yeah, true. So adding on to the polyamory conversation, probably not anytime soon. All I hear is that poly never works out and that monogamous relationships are best. Yeah, I think that's as well. Like, I think there's sort of this reluctant sort of like polyamory is okay if you want to do it, I guess. And like, I think there's a lot more even vanilla understanding around BDSM is being like, oh yeah, it's like a bonding sex thing. Like, they kind of like get it a little bit easier, whereas polyamory is like, oh, I could never do it. I'm just too jealous. Oh, I could never understand. Like, if I really love someone, I can't even think about dating other people. So if you're dating multiple people, that must really mean you don't love any of them. It's like, oh my God, please just like, I hate having those conversations. And that is certainly much more the dominant narrative, where I think that outrightly hating BDSM and saying that people that are kinky are like evil is not the mainstream opinion anymore. It's more like it's out there, but I think it's like it's a minority, but it's like 40-60, whereas I think opinions about polyamory are more like 75-25, like against polyamory, especially because people are going to be like, oh my God, what's next? Bestiality? Are we going to let the Mormons marry whoever they want? Child brides? Like, it ends up going into this like insane slippery slope place with like, no, marrying multiple adult human beings doesn't mean you get to marry a child or marry a possum. Like, no. But it's always, oh, the moral slippery slope. And it's like, listen, there are people that have married their cars. You can't stop them. They exist. And I'm sorry that hurts you. Oh, true, Erica. When poly people break up, it's because poly. When monogamous people break up, it's because they weren't monogamous, right? Oh, true. Yeah, people definitely get on that. Oh, well, like, oh, people broke up and they're poly. I guess that means poly doesn't work. No one ever says like, oh, you broke up, that must be monogamous. You're like, yeah. Usually when people break up in poly, and there is actually, if you want the actual science, there is a book. It is called the Polyamory Breakup Book. It is by Kathy Labadoa, I think. I think her first name's Kathy. Not sure, but it's called the Polyamory Breakup Book, and she talks about like the reasons why people who are polyamorous break up. Part of it is because someone isn't truly polyamorous, and polyamory itself was the issue. For most people, it's other mundane life shit, like one partner is moving across the country and doesn't have time for them anymore, or because they have irreconcilable differences with family planning questions, or because they have vastly different moral opinions, or somebody converts to a different religion, like any of the other reasons why other people break up, a small percentage of it is poly. And even within poly, the big reason why people break up is because they have different styles of doing poly. One person wants strictly hierarchical poly with veto power, and the other person wants relationship anarchy with no like clear labels. So it totally depends. Totally depends. Oh, we have a super chat here from Michelle. Had 3-person weekend scene with my fiance and friend. I found out that I liked being challenged as a dom and actually gave up power to that friend. Oh, interesting. Sounds very fun. Yeah, I think totally, like, exploring new things is awesome, and you can be dominant, but like having that challenge. And I think you can be bratty kind of and like also be a dom. Like, I don't know if that makes sense. I don't think you would call it bratting, but I think you can be a dom that still likes having challenge or likes giving challenge to other people. But thank you for sharing. I call 50 Shades the trilogy written by a desperate housewife for desperate housewives. Listen, I don't want to commentate on E.L. James's private life, but I have suspicions. I have suspicions. Listen, everyone is allowed to have a midlife crisis. Y'all get at least one. And if you end up making $1 million franchise out of your midlife crisis, Lord hope we could all be so lucky, you know? It's so wild to me that the case has spread to non-true crime channels, and that's huge. Yeah, I mean, there's like Casey Anthony and stuff, right? There have been lots of cases over the years that have gone very mainstream for various reasons, and I think Brian's behavior has certainly helped that along in terms of it becoming such a big thing, because not like he like immediately cooperated and was giving public statements like, no, now he's missing, and like they're processing the van for evidence, like all this other stuff is happening. So I understand kind of why it went viral, but I hope that does more good than harm ultimately. I hope it helps the family kind of cope with things, and they get the support to help like financially with the funeral arrangements and missed time from work and all that, because that is a very big thing to deal with. Not to mention the legal costs, of course, associated with having to go through now a trial potentially for murder at some point. Yes, my P.O. box is still open. Who is your favorite YouTuber? Oh, it varies so much. I used to really like Simon and Martina, but we talked about why I don't watch their channel anymore on the last stream, and it's because everything has gone in a very strange direction. I mean, I really like Suxplanations, of course. They're very good. Who was I watching? I mean, like Kendall Ray and Bailey Sarian are my two favorite like true crime channels. My favorite underrated commentary channel is George Rockall Schmidt. He's very funny and very good. Tara Mooney is great. I'm really into Fundy Fridays recently. I love hearing about fundamentalists. They're super, super funny. Nick DiRomano is also super funny, and I love, like, we're the same age, I think, or he's like maybe a year older than me. And like, so we know all the same media, all the same movies, all the same like cultural references, and it's like really just like, I don't normally get to watch a lot of people that are like exactly my age, and getting to see someone be like, yeah, I'm gonna review High School Musical. I'm like, oh, perfect. I watched that many a time when I was younger. Yeah, I'm trying to think of like who else like that I've been watching a lot that's like a YouTuber. Like Red Letter Media, Kip Boga, but a lot of them also like are also streamers and just like re-upload to YouTube. So I don't know if they're like YouTubers exactly. But yeah, that's sort of like what I've been currently vibing with, I think. Kind of going through my sub feed real quickly to remember. I subscribe to a number of YouTube channels. I listen to a lot of YouTube. I don't necessarily sit and watch YouTube. I definitely have a preference for like long form talking, more like podcast-esque content than I do like short, quippy, engaging videos, but everyone has their thing. Call Lake City. Oh, that's a perfect name. That's perfect. Exactly. Wait, is there polyamory in Steven Universe? I have never seen it, so I don't know. A lot of abuse victims will pathologize themselves. I hadn't considered that, but yeah, I guess it's sort of like, well, this person is telling me I'm crazy, so I must be crazy for a reason, so let me find a label to explain how I'm crazy. Yeah, I guess I could see that. I just don't understand why they let him get such a big head start on the investigation and refused to speak with the police when they just let him walk away and wasn't watching him. Yeah, I want to know how the fuck that happened. Like, did they fucking, like, get him in a barrel? Did they do, like, some kind of, like, I don't know, like brotherhood? Like, what do they do? Like, how do they sneak him out of that? Because, like, media, police, random citizens were watching that house. Like, how did he get out? Did he put on like sunglasses and a hat and just like slip out the back door? Like, how did that even happen? I don't know. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I've been muted to the end of the chat. Okay, I have definitely missed some chat messages, so I'm sorry. I ran out of room. I'm sure you all left very insightful comments and questions, but YouTube has decided I had too many messages, and I'm now much farther along than I was. A certified phlebotomist could learn over Zoom. Yeah, I feel like if you're a phlebotomist, if you already have like knowledge of like anatomy and sanitation procedures, like you're gonna be way ahead of the curve on that one. And so, yeah, I think learning over Zoom would be fine. Actually, I just said that. Is it learning? It's learning over the curve, isn't it? Not over the curb. Not like a car, like a road curb. English is weird. Okay. Why on earth did anyone shame me for blankets? Blankets are cool. I mean warm. That's why. Because there are people I know that are still in like 90-degree weather. And I'm going to be like, why do you have a blanket, crazy person? And I definitely even have that at like other people's houses. Where it's just like, I don't want a blanket because I'm cold. I want a blanket because I like holding something. Because I have very like fidgety hands. And so like, I like 70% of the time I'm filming a video, I'm like, if I'm not like doing this with my hands, I'm like holding a blanket. Like I just like having my hands do something, you know? Ah, true. Yes. First focus on self-empowerment and exploration. Great idea. We love it. Oh, yeah, you know, key. Okay. True. Oh, I mean, if you're gonna do it like a super queer kink academy, I think that works. I think it's just like the hardest part of it, like if you know how to find the right people, is getting a space that's big enough and affordable to be able to do that in. And you would want to do an outside space because otherwise you're like jeopardizing the privacy and safety of whoever lives in that home if you're trying to do it out of someone's house. And I think that's the hardest part, is getting someone that would be like willing to rent to you. If you're trying to establish a like, yeah, we want to do like kink classes here where we, you know, have someone live here for 6 months and only do kinky stuff the whole time. Like you're gonna want to know that, because like if you're dealing with commercial real estate, it's a very different game from like private like home ownership or trying to rent as like a tenant in a building. So it's a whole big scary world. Thoughts on online BDSM activities and tips on how to go about it. So I don't give advice on how to do online BDSM. I think I get like one question about this every live stream. I don't give advice on how to do online BDSM. I think it's totally valid if that's your thing, if that speaks to you. I understand why it is practical for some people. It's more accessible. You are, just going to have an easier time finding people online. But I also feel like that's just like not me. I don't have experience doing that, so I can't really give advice like about how to do online activities. I do have other videos about like other ways to, like, in my video about like COVID and everything, I have videos where I've talked about kind of individual ideas, but I'm like not gonna be the person for that because I've like never done it. But if anyone else in the chat wants to contribute like their thoughts about how like you've done BDSM remotely or online and how it's worked for you, like it's such a general question. Like you might as well ask me like thoughts on BDSM activities, like tips on how to go about it. Like totally depends on you and your partner, and like if you're gonna be on video call or not, or text only, or if you've met in real life or not, or if it's long distance. Like it all so many variables in there that all sort of change the answer. Okay, great question. How do you know if you are asexual or just low to no sex drive? I mean, that is a question I get a lot. And in some cases, it is hard to tell the difference because they can go with each other. There are cases where you can have both a low sex drive and also be asexual. One doesn't necessarily cause the other, but they can go together. Some people have like a high sex drive. Whether or not a sex drive is real is also sort of up for debate. But even if you have sort of a higher motivation towards like you like having orgasms, like you can still be asexual and still like having orgasms. It's like just because you feel one way about one thing doesn't mean you feel one way about the other. For me, I think about it like asexuality is about having attraction to a particular person in the form of like I have a desire to have sex with like this individual person. Having a sex drive is about a desire to engage in sexual practices in general. That could be masturbation, that could be sex, it could be fantasies. Like, it's not necessarily about I feel attracted towards doing sex with this one person. It's about sort of your drive towards having sex in general and how motivated you are to engage in those sorts of behaviors. But of course, if you are asexual and have a low sex drive, like those things can mask each other. And if you have a low sex drive, it can also be harder to, or at least less likely that you would experience that sort of attraction towards people. But for me, like, the question is like about attraction and whether or not you experience it. And if you do, like, you can be sexually attracted to someone and be like, oh, I wish I could have sex with them, but like I don't feel motivated to, versus like not even like having that on your radar at all. But it's like hard to tell sometimes. And there can, I think, be cases, as much as like I don't think people want to talk about this, like there are cases where people, like, there's actually a clinical condition that is called hyposexuality, which is like a clinically low sex drive that causes distress. And that's why it's a disorder, is because it has to cause like distress or like functional impairment, either in like relationships or like socially in some way. And that is the same thing as being asexual, because like being hyposexual sort of indicate that being in that state causes you discomfort and displeasure and you wish it were different. Whereas like being asexual is just like an orientation, and usually, at least most people I know that are asexual are comfortable with it, even if it does sometimes cause like difficulties finding compatible partners. Does that make sense? Excuse me. To Twig says, I think the community could use more people with good intentions trying to educate, especially since there are predators or ignorant people out there. True. I think more people trying is better than less people trying. I agree. Oh, yeah, good point. So, V Stormfelt Witch added, are you also more tired, underslept, fatigued compared to comparable bodies in your friend group? That would be more indicator of a low sex drive, probably, and might indicate low T. Yeah, because if you're a guy, there could also be factors with, like, low testosterone in there. And yeah, I guess that's also, like, physically, like, your body's, like, functionality as well. Because being asexual doesn't necessarily like mean anything about your hormones or your body's function, but sometimes a low sex drive can go along with medication usage. It can go along with hormone issues and go along with a lot of things that don't necessarily have anything to do with a particular orientation. Hmm. Incubus Creations asked, so questions about the Shibari sect of the BDSM lifestyle. What's the weight limit? For example, someone's 200 pounds. Is it possible to do a partial or full suspension? So great question. There is no limit to who can be suspended. I have literally seen people who are like 250 pounds in a wheelchair be suspended. You can figure out a way to do it. Given there are materials that are better to do the job with or not. And usually, if you're doing things in an educated manner, you want something that has a breaking strength that is like a certain number of multiplications out from the body that you are going to be tying up. Like, there's a pretty high, like, safety bearing for that. And if you're tying with, like, natural fiber, like if you're tying with like a worn out piece of jute that has a breaking strength of 150 pounds, probably not a good idea to suspend anybody off of that. And for the most part, it's a bad idea to suspend off of most natural fibers anyways. But if you're using something like Posh, for example, which at minimum for a single piece of rope has a breaking strength of like thousands of pounds, like, yeah, you can suspend somebody that's like, you've got like 20 pieces of rope on them. Like, that, like, the combined breaking strength of everything is like 20,000 pounds. Like, you're probably going to be okay. At that point, it becomes more of a question of, like, how solid is the hardware you're suspending off of, and then, like, how the hard point that you're working on, like, if it's actually properly installed or not, and if it's in, like, a good location. But, like, as far as, like, the body themselves are concerned and, like, the rope, like, yeah, like, it's not just like, oh, you're too fat to be suspended because, like, the rope would break. Like, no. Pick better rope. Don't suspend anybody with, like, 5mm natural jute. God, no. Why? I know that people do it, but they shouldn't. Because, like, even me at, like, 100 pounds, like, I am not... Like, I don't feel good about being in rope at that low of a breaking strength. And, like, that's even the places that rate their jute. Because a lot of places don't rate their jute at all and just say, don't use this for suspension. Like, point blank, period. So if you're doing something that's, like, suspension worthy, it's going to have a way higher breaking strength than only 200 pounds. So, for the most part, it's okay. There's a lot of, like, before I say that, go to remedial ropes, go to crash restraint. There are a million answers to, like, is this person too big to be suspended? Different weight ratings for different types of rope. Like when you get into actually doing it, like, you'll learn. There's a lot of, like, math and things to figure out in terms of, like, breaking strength and, like, the minimum, like, safety rating you want to have. And, like, there's, like, a bunch of information out there. But the end goal, no matter kind of how detailed you get into what that answer actually consists of, is, like, yeah, you can't. Like, there's not really... Like it becomes, like, at some point it becomes more of a, like, mobility and comfort issue than, like, just, like, the rope would break, oh no. Like, different bodies have to be suspended differently and maybe use a different size of rope or different placement, and, like, that is more of the question than, like, can it be done at all. Okay, oh my gosh, it's literally 7:59. I'm gonna answer one more question and then I'm so sorry we have to go. Unless there are any last minute super chats. Otherwise, I'm gonna answer one more question and then I will be wrapping things up for tonight. What if you have been hurt in a relationship breakdown and you don't want to get really involved with anyone again, but you still need to be human and get out there again, but with self-kept limits? I would say self-kept limits, great idea. Definitely like know your boundaries. But if you don't really want to get involved with anyone else, you don't have to. Like being in a relationship isn't a requirement. Like you can just want to be friends with people. You can work on your existing connections that were around from before that relationship or during that relationship. You can work on yourself and your own hobbies. You don't have to like immediately get back out there and start dating again if you don't feel ready for that. And I would actually advise you don't, because especially if your last relationship breakup was really hard, like you need that space to process and not like try to also establish a new relationship at the same time. So, I totally get it. And I think it's, you know, if having your strong boundaries and limits is a great idea. And I don't think it needs to even be a but. I think everyone should have limits for themselves and boundaries in order to sort of make sure that their interactions are going the way that they want to have them go. But I wish you the best of luck, and definitely like don't guilt yourself or feel like you have to be like ready to do something again in a certain amount of time. I know there's sort of a pressure to like, oh, get back out there. Oh, you know, you got to jump back on the horse. And if you don't feel ready, you don't feel ready. And like, listen to your body. Like, definitely keep that introspection going. Listen to what you feel ready to do and what feels safe and comfortable. And, you know, extend like 10% beyond that. Not 50, not 200%. Like, you know, if you're going to go beyond a little bit of your comfort zone, go a little bit beyond your comfort zone. Not all the way. Don't blow it out of the water. And sometimes just like dipping your toe back into things and not going into it with a particular goal in mind, just wanting to like meet people, see a new space, have a fun cocktail drink, whatever. Like if that's all you want to do, those are very easy goals, and then there's not any sort of pressure to be like, oh, I gotta like make sure I start dating right again before I run out of time. Like, you know, it'll be okay, I promise. Oh, we have a super chat here from Michael. Thank you again, Evie. Indeed, the whole gang, for an entertaining and enlightening Friday evening. Yes, thank you so much. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, on that note, I think that is all the time I have for questions. Thank you guys so much for being here. I know there was like so much I couldn't get to, but I do always try to get to everything if I can, and I appreciate you all being here. We will be streaming again next Friday, as we usually do, 6 p.m. All the different main time zones are down below, and I'll have a video for you guys out very soon. If you didn't see the video from earlier today, please watch it. If you need more EV content in your life. But other than that, I hope you all have a great rest of your Friday or start to your weekend, and I will see you all again soon.